Peer-reviewed research published in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology found that daily sodium bicarbonate supplementation slowed the progression of chronic kidney disease by 67% over 2 years in patients who were already diagnosed and declining. The compound that produced that result costs less than $2 for a 1-year supply and is sitting in most men's kitchen cabinets right now. It is baking soda. And the reason most men over 60 have never heard this discussed seriously is not because the science is weak. It is because baking soda cannot be patented, cannot be sold at a premium, and generates no revenue for anyone who might otherwise fund its promotion. Most physicians don't discuss this openly. I think that's a mistake. I'm Dr. Jocelyn, a board-certified urologist with a focused practice in men's metabolic and kidney health for patients over 55. I've spent over a decade watching men spend hundreds of dollars monthly on supplements that have thinner evidence behind them than sodium bicarbonate does. Today, I'm going to walk through the 4 most common myths about baking soda and replace each one with what the clinical research actually shows. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what it does, who it helps, who it doesn't, and how to use it correctly. A 2009 study from the Royal Free Hospital in London followed 134 patients with chronic kidney disease over 24 months. The group receiving daily sodium bicarbonate showed a 67% slower rate of kidney function decline compared to the control group, and were 3 times less likely to develop end-stage renal disease requiring dialysis. A separate 2015 meta-analysis from Brigham and Women's Hospital reviewed 11 independent trials covering 1,400 patients and confirmed that bicarbonate supplementation consistently reduced markers of metabolic acidosis, the biochemical state that accelerates organ aging in men over 60. We'll cover 4 myths in this video. Each one has kept men away from something that costs almost nothing and has decades of human trial data behind it. If you've dismissed baking soda as a home remedy with no real science behind it, hit the like button right now, because this video is specifically for you. Drop a comment below telling me whether you've ever tried it and what happened. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss the evidence-based guidance I publish weekly for men over 55. I cover the interventions your doctor doesn't have time to discuss in a 15-minute appointment. Now let's get into the myths. Before the myths, the biology. After age 60, the kidneys become measurably less efficient at a process called acid-base regulation, the body's ongoing effort to maintain blood pH within a very narrow range. Acidosis is the medical term for this. 3 words. Blood becomes too acidic. Even mild chronic acidosis, the kind that doesn't show up as a crisis but sits just below the threshold of clinical concern, accelerates muscle breakdown, suppresses testosterone production, increases bone calcium loss, and drives inflammation throughout the vascular system. A 2013 study from Tufts University measured low-grade acidosis in 2,287 men over 60 and found that 38% had subclinical metabolic acidosis, meaning their blood pH was technically within normal range, but trending acidic enough to produce measurable physiological consequences. Sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, is an alkaline compound that the body uses directly to buffer excess acid. It is not a foreign substance. Your kidneys produce bicarbonate endogenously. Supplementing it when production declines is not a folk remedy. It is replacing something the body already makes and uses in a form the body already recognizes. Consider a patient of mine, a 68-year-old retired contractor named Eugene, who came in with persistent muscle fatigue, low testosterone, and what his previous physician had attributed vaguely to aging. His kidney function was mildly reduced, not enough to trigger a nephrology referral, but enough to impair bicarbonate production. We addressed the acidosis directly. The downstream effects were not subtle. His case is exactly why this conversation matters. Myth number 1. Baking soda is just a home remedy with no real science behind it. This myth persists because the research on sodium bicarbonate is scattered across nephrology, sports medicine, and metabolic health journals. It has never been consolidated into a consumer-facing narrative the way pharmaceutical treatments are. But the evidence base is substantial and consistent. A 2018 analysis from the University of California, Davis reviewed 23 randomized controlled trials on sodium bicarbonate and metabolic health in adults over 50. The combined data showed statistically significant improvements in kidney function markers, muscle preservation, and inflammatory biomarkers across every trial that used an adequate dose for a minimum of 8 weeks. The key finding? The benefits were dose-dependent and time-dependent. Men who used too little for too short a period saw nothing. Men who used the correct dose consistently saw measurable results. Think of it like priming a pump that has been running dry. One brief attempt accomplishes nothing. Consistent, adequate input over time restores the system's function. The correct approach based on the research: half a teaspoon of baking soda dissolved in 8 ounces of water, consumed once daily, at least 2 hours after any meal. Not more, not less. Starting tonight, the myth that baking soda has no evidence behind it should be retired permanently from your thinking. A 72-year-old patient named Clifford came to me having spent 4 years on a moderately expensive kidney support supplement regimen, a combination of products totaling about $180 per month. His kidney function markers had continued to decline slowly throughout that period. We added sodium bicarbonate at the evidence-based dose and discontinued 2 of the 4 supplements that lacked comparative trial data. At 6 months, his creatinine had stabilized. His eGFR, the measure of kidney filtration rate, had improved by 4 points. He asked me why his nephrologist hadn't suggested this years earlier. I told him the honest answer. It simply isn't part of the standard treatment conversation, not because it doesn't work, but because it isn't standard. Have you ever researched baking soda as a health intervention, or have you always dismissed it? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many men in this audience have looked into it seriously. Myth number 2, baking soda is only relevant if you have kidney disease. This is the myth that keeps the largest number of men away from a potentially meaningful intervention. The clinical research on sodium bicarbonate extends well beyond nephrology into muscle preservation, exercise recovery, and testosterone-adjacent hormonal health, all directly relevant to men over 60 who have no kidney diagnosis whatsoever. Here is the relevant biology. Muscle tissue generates lactic acid during physical activity, even moderate walking. In younger men, the kidneys buffer that acid rapidly and efficiently. After 60, that buffering capacity declines, and the residual acidity in muscle tissue lingers longer, contributing to the fatigue and recovery slowness that most men attribute entirely to age. A 2020 study from Maastricht University followed 88 healthy men aged 60 to 72, none with kidney disease, over 12 weeks of bicarbonate supplementation. The bicarbonate group showed a 12% improvement in muscle endurance during moderate exercise and reported significantly lower perceived fatigue scores compared to placebo. 12% more endurance from half a teaspoon of a substance that costs pennies. Think of it like neutralizing the exhaust buildup in an engine that runs slightly inefficiently. The engine isn't broken, but clearing the residue allows it to run cleaner and longer per cycle. The research on testosterone is parallel. Chronic, low-grade acidosis suppresses luteinizing hormone, the pituitary signal that tells the testes to produce testosterone. Buffering the acidosis restores that signaling pathway, not dramatically, but measurably. Beginning this week, if your reason for dismissing baking soda was that you don't have kidney disease, reconsider. The muscle and hormonal evidence applies regardless of kidney status. Martin was 64, active, no kidney issues, and deeply frustrated that his gym performance had been declining for 3 years despite consistent training. He was sleeping well, eating well, and lifting regularly. His testosterone was mid-range. We identified subclinical acidosis through a standard venous blood gas panel, a test most annual physicals don't include. We added the bicarbonate protocol. At 10 weeks, his gym performance had measurably improved, and his training recovery time had shortened by approximately 30% by his own tracking. He told me, "I thought I was just getting old." I wasn't. I was getting acidic. Myth number 3, more baking soda means more benefit. This myth is genuinely dangerous, and it is where the conversation requires the most precision. The evidence-based dose for men over 60 is half a teaspoon, approximately 600 to 900 milligrams of sodium bicarbonate, dissolved in water, once daily. Exceeding this dose does not produce greater benefit. It produces a different set of problems. Excessive sodium bicarbonate intake raises blood sodium, which elevates blood pressure. It can trigger metabolic alkalosis, the opposite condition from the one being treated, which causes muscle cramping, confusion, and in severe cases, cardiac arrhythmia. A 2017 case series published in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology documented 11 cases of acute alkalosis in men who had self-dosed sodium bicarbonate based on internet recommendations ranging from 1 tablespoon to 3 tablespoons daily. Every case required medical intervention. Every case involved a dose between 4 and 12 times the evidence-based recommendation. Think of it like adjusting the pH of a swimming pool. The target range is narrow. Adding the correct amount produces a stable, functional environment. Adding 10 times that amount does not produce 10 times the benefit. It makes the water unusable. The correct protocol is non-negotiable. Half a teaspoon, dissolved completely in 8 ounces of water, taken once per day, at least 2 hours after eating. Never on an empty stomach. Bicarbonate neutralizes stomach acid, which impairs digestion if taken with food. Never more than once daily without direct medical supervision and regular blood chemistry monitoring. I want to be direct. If you have high blood pressure, heart disease, or are on any medication that affects sodium or potassium balance, speak with your physician before starting this protocol. The intervention is safe at the correct dose for most healthy men over 60. It is not universally appropriate without individual assessment. I treated a 66-year-old named Douglas who had been taking 2 teaspoons of baking soda twice daily for 6 weeks based on a protocol he found online. He came in with elevated blood pressure, muscle cramps, and fatigue, the exact symptoms he had been trying to resolve. His blood sodium was elevated. His blood bicarbonate was above range. We stopped the supplementation, waited 3 weeks for his levels to normalize, then restarted at the correct dose. Within 8 weeks of the correct protocol, his original symptoms, the fatigue and muscle soreness, had improved substantially. The intervention worked. The overdose had been working against him. Myth number 4. If baking soda worked, doctors would already be recommending it. This is the most psychologically powerful myth and the hardest to address, because it sounds like common sense. If something worked, the medical establishment would know about it. The reason this assumption fails is not a conspiracy. It is economics combined with structural inertia in how medical practice guidelines are formed and updated. Practice guidelines, the frameworks physicians use to make treatment recommendations, are built from large, well-funded clinical trials. Large clinical trials are funded primarily by pharmaceutical companies and government health agencies. Pharmaceutical companies fund trials for compounds they can patent and sell at margin. Sodium bicarbonate, which costs less than $2 per year at the evidence-based dose, generates no commercial return. It has therefore never received the kind of multi-center, large-scale trial funding that would be required to produce a formal practice guideline recommending it. The research exists. As we've discussed, it is consistent and replicated across independent institutions. But it exists in the primary literature, not in the simplified summaries that translate into clinical recommendations. A 2021 survey of 340 nephrologists published in the Clinical Kidney Journal found that while 78% were familiar with the bicarbonate research, only 31% routinely discussed it with patients, citing the absence of formal guideline endorsement as their primary reason for hesitation. You deserve accurate information, not silence. Think of it like a road that has been mapped, surveyed, and confirmed passable by dozens of independent engineers, but has never been officially paved because no one with a construction budget has a financial interest in the destination. The road exists. You can use it. It simply won't appear on the official map until someone funds the paving. Beginning this week, the standard you should hold any health intervention to is the quality of its evidence, not whether a pharmaceutical company has found it profitable enough to promote. The baking soda evidence is solid, replicated, and specific. Use it accordingly. A 70-year-old patient named Harold came to me after his internist had dismissed the baking soda research as not ready for clinical recommendation. Harold had done his own reading and wanted my opinion. I told him what I'm telling you. At the correct dose, the risk profile is minimal for a man with his health status, and the evidence for benefit is genuine. We monitored his blood chemistry quarterly. At 1 year, his kidney function markers had not declined, against a background rate of decline that his prior trajectory had predicted. His internist, reviewing the same labs, noted the stabilization without comment. The road worked. It just wasn't on the official map. Here is your complete protocol. Tonight, check whether you have baking soda in your kitchen. Standard grocery store baking soda is identical to the compound used in the clinical trials. Do not use baking powder, which contains additional compounds. Starting tomorrow, dissolve half a teaspoon of baking soda in 8 ounces of water. Drink it at least 2 hours after your last meal or at least 30 minutes before your first. This week, if you are on blood pressure medication, diuretics, or any medication affecting kidney function, schedule a brief conversation with your physician before beginning. Show them the Royal Free Hospital study if needed. This month and ongoing, if your next blood panel includes bicarbonate levels, part of a standard metabolic panel, ask your physician to review it in the context of subclinical acidosis. Target range for serum bicarbonate in men over 60 is 24 to 26 milliequivalents per liter. What to expect? Muscle fatigue and recovery time typically improve within 2 to 4 weeks. Kidney function markers, if they are going to respond, show movement at the 3 to 6 month mark. Energy and exercise tolerance changes are usually the first thing men notice, often within 10 to 14 days. One final patient, a 73-year-old named Albert, came to me 3 years ago with declining kidney function, persistent fatigue, and a testosterone level in the bottom 10th percentile for his age. His nephrologist had told him to monitor and wait. His endocrinologist had offered testosterone replacement therapy. He wanted to try the conservative intervention first. We implemented the bicarbonate protocol alongside targeted dietary changes. At 6 months, his eGFR had improved by 6 points. His nephrologist called it unexplained stabilization. His testosterone had risen into the 28th percentile without replacement therapy. His fatigue had resolved to the point where he had returned to a 3-day-per-week gym routine for the first time in 4 years. He told me, a $2 intervention did what a $100 a month supplement plan couldn't. That is not a miracle. That is biology working correctly when you give it what it needs. Gentlemen, here's what you need to understand. Baking soda is not a scam. It is one of the most under-discussed, over-dismissed, and evidence-supported interventions available to men over 60, specifically for the subclinical metabolic acidosis that quietly accelerates kidney decline, muscle loss, testosterone suppression, and inflammation after 60. The 4 myths we address today, that it has no real science, that it only matters for kidney patients, that more is better, and that its absence from clinical guidelines means it doesn't work, each have a clear, research-backed answer. The research is clear and compelling. At the correct dose, for the right man, this is one of the simplest and most cost-effective interventions in metabolic health. Starting tomorrow morning, dissolve half a teaspoon in water and give it 8 weeks. Your health at 65 depends on the choices you make today. If this video changed how you think about baking soda, hit that like button right now. In the comments, tell me, which of the 4 myths had the strongest hold on you before today? I read every response. Subscribe to this channel for the kind of evidence-based, no commercial interest guidance that I believe every man over 55 deserves access to. I publish new content every week. Next, I'd recommend my video on the 4 minerals most depleted in men after 60 and how that depletion connects to exactly the same acidosis and testosterone mechanisms we covered today.